Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Helen Moon to the conversation. Welcome, Helen.
Welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
You're more than welcome. It's almost like that anxious moment at the beginning. It's like, hello, welcome. As I will always do, just very briefly, how we got to this conversation. And then, Helen, I'll let you do a proper introduction, let people know a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then we'll get into the big conversation, of course. Helen and I have known each other for a few years, I guess. And it's all sort of surrounding or coming around sort of events and meetings and some of the work she does in event spaces. So I won't steal too much of your thunder on that because you've got some amazing stuff that you already do. But yeah, so we've sort of known each other for a while. We've been talking on and off, and we thought it would be lovely to sit down and have a conversation because I know Helen has an amazing story to talk about her journey with mental health. So I'm going to leave it at that. So we're here together today for this recording. Helen, throw it over to you. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Matt. So as introduced, my name is Helen Moon. I'm chief exec and founder of an organisation called Eventwell. I've been in the events industry for 25 years this year, quarter of a century to make me feel really old now. So I haven't really worked in any other industry, to be honest. I've worked in hospitality and events from the age of 16, from starting like most people did, kind of working in cafes and restaurants and hotels and all the way up to kind of now with Eventwell and the work that we do with Eventwell. So Eventwell was founded in 2017. The idea of Eventwell, as someone, which obviously I'm going to tell my story, so I'm not going to give too much away, but the launch of Eventwell and the founding of Eventwell is linked to my own lived experience and personal story. But having an awareness of that and others in the industry, Eventwell is supposed to be an annual campaign for the event industry, business travel, hospitality industries, where we had Event Wellbeing Week in September of 2017, which is an annual campaign. We now have Event Wellbeing Day in March as well. And that was the idea of it. And the idea was really just to get the industry talking about an area of health that traditionally we've never talked about, and was always like I call it a lot of time kind of almost like a dirty secret, if that makes sense. We all either had our own, a lot of people had their own experiences of when things have gone wrong and stress has been a little bit too much, or there's people that have had the colleague that went on the 2-week holiday and stuff, and nobody ever knew why they'd suddenly gone on a holiday or why they were off, but there was never the real reason as to why that person was suddenly off for 2 weeks. So it was just really to kind of motivate and kickstart conversations. And it was also off the back of a statement that came from CareerCast over in the States that said that event coordination was the 5th most stressful career, which kind of prompted the movement, if that makes sense. So when we had the first Event Wellbeing Week in September, that's actually, we carried out some research, and we carried out research for 2 or 3 years after that as well. We tend to work now more with organisations like Mind and the Mental Health Foundation to tag on to their research, which is a lot more comprehensive in terms of the information they can give. But we identified in that first week and in 2018 and in 2019 that roughly 1 in 3 event professionals will experience an illness related to their mental health. Not necessarily, they're not saying that 1 in 3 event professionals are going to get diagnosed with a mental health condition, but they'll experience illness that is related to their mental health. And that can be stress, burnout, anxiety, depression, to much more serious conditions that we're all aware of. And that's when we kind of decided that, the event industry needs something a little bit more than an annual campaign where people talk about things. Talking is important, as this session is all about. We all need to talk about mental health, and we need to continue talking about mental health because it's the talk that helps people get the support that they need. But we need an organisation that kind of drives and trailblazes action and real deliverables that can be put in place that make sure that people are offered preventative and proactive support that will try and impact on that 1 in 3. Will try and prevent less people becoming poorly on a regular basis. So Eventwell as a social enterprise was then incorporated in October of 2017, the month following that first campaign week. And we're a not-for-profit, we're charitable. it's important for us that we're not seen to be making money off the back of people's misfortune or illness. So not for profit, it is very important to us, but as a social enterprise, we have commercial products that we offer to the events industry, and then the profits of those actually go to benefit people who are experiencing poor mental health. So we have a program called Pledge, um, and Pledge is all about grant giving. So we give grocery shops hardship relief grants, and we actually pay for talking therapies as well for any event professionals that are struggling. You know, we've got a cost of living crisis at the moment, so I mean we put the dignity element on it, which is really important for mental health and well-being. So rather than kind of offering a food bank that someone can come and get a bag of it, where there's some grocery vouchers, go and buy your food in the way that you would normally do. So it's all about the dignity kind of stuff, and safeguarding confidentiality, all of those kind of elements are added into that. So there's a very serious element to what we do. The paying for talking therapies as well is very important to us. There's a number of event professionals that we've been supporting, one in particular for nearly 2 years now, and since the pledge started, in terms of making sure they get that therapy support, and they're still in therapy, and Event Well funds that, we pay for that. So that's the serious side in terms of what we do. And the serious, but perhaps not as serious side is the commercial element. And our new product is called Hub. Yep. My experience and my life experience makes me very aware of the importance of quiet rooms and sensory spaces. Very common outside of the events industry. We know that most young people now and children at school, at university, at college, you know, at play centres and soft play centres, I'm also a mum, can experience a quiet or sensory room. It's almost like they're put in place a standard, but for the events industry, it's very new. And some people have put quiet rooms in place, but not kind of understood the initial design of a quiet room and what it's for, which is predominantly to support people with mental health conditions and neurodiversity, so that they have a place to go, a safe place. And that's what we do now. So for the past year, we've been going on site at exhibitions and conferences and events and drinks receptions, putting in place quiet rooms, sensory spaces with lighting and fidget toys and beanbags and meditation stations and mindfulness stations. People can colour, they can do a jigsaw, they can just put a noise cancelling headset on and just listen to calm, or just put a noise cancelling headset on and listen to nothing. Whatever it is, about providing a space for people to do what they need to do in any given moment, should they have become distressed, overwhelmed, triggered, or even if they just need 10 minutes. So it's a space that isn't just for people with mental health conditions and who are neurodivergent. It's a space that everyone can use, that kind of brings into play the importance of taking a break and giving your mind a rest and giving you sensory. So it's about brain overload, it's about sensory overload, it's about the importance of allowing that recharge, reset kind of element to come into play, and how important it is for mental health and mental well-being, particularly bearing in mind that the world we live in at the moment, 24/7 information overload kind of stuff. Our brains and as human beings, we haven't evolved yet to be able to deal with that effectively, which is possibly one of the reasons we're seeing such increased levels of poor mental health, and particularly in younger generations who are more likely to rely on digital technologies in a way that older generations don't, kind of stuff. So it's an important space. We're particularly proud of it. It's a new service. We're getting there. Not everybody is embracing it at the moment, shall we say, but we've kind of said, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and mental health, and providing support to help people with mental health as part of the SDGs, we've said that by 2030, you can pretty much expect that every time you attend an event or go to an exhibition, whatever type of event that will be, there'll be a quiet space, supervised, safeguarded quiet space with support there in the form of we call them Event Well hosts. We don't like to call them mental health first aiders, but they are mental health first aiders kind of stuff. Shame and stigma still, is still prevalent at the moment. So we're careful in terms of the terminology that we use, because we don't want to frighten people off, so they don't want to use the space kind of stuff. But Yeah, we've said by 2030 it'll be as common across all kind of areas of the community and our lives as we would want it to be as mental health professionals.
Brilliant. Well, I think, I can vouch for everything you're doing, and I absolutely support your programs because I think they're so valuable. And you and I have met at a couple of the events, and I've seen your spaces and those quiet spaces and all the things that you offer there. And I just think that, yeah, absolutely. 2030 seems a long way away. Let's make it happen quicker, right? Let's have it everywhere all the time, because I think it's so valuable. I want to link into your story though, because you've told us all about the work that you're doing, which is fantastic and it's fabulous. And for everybody out there, please do support Event Well. And if you're somebody that plans events, if you're thinking about conferences, if you're hosting whatever it might be, always consider, even talking to Helen about the work that they're doing with Event Well, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. Coming from a travel background myself, I've been to many events and exhibitions where the noise levels are very high, and it is very, it can be quite disturbing at times for people to manage their way and filter their way through all of those noises. So there's a reason why you do what you do, and I love your reasons, and I understand, there's a lot of stuff in there. So tell us a bit about your journey, Helen. So let's roll back now from where you are with what you do right now to let's learn a little bit about you and who you are.
Okay, so let's take it right back then. So we'll take it back to 15-year-old Helen. I think probably the nice place to start. Although there will be a touch of kind of even younger than that Helen when I kind of get to the bit, because this is going to be.
Yep.
Then Matt, you probably know what's coming. This is going to be a bit later, so I'm going to try and tell my story in order of how things have happened.
Yeah,
that's the best way for me to do it, really.
Okay.
But I think it's probably easy to say that I have vast lived experience of poor mental health, shall we say. And I don't want to say that this is a kind of, we all have mental health. Basically, every single one of us has mental health. So we all have experience of mental health. So I think it's wrong for me to say that my lived experience is all about mental health kind of stuff. It is.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has got experience of mental health because we have it in the same way that we have physical health. I think my experience of poor mental health, is all my life. I don't know what it's like to not live with poor mental health, if that's from an adolescent kind of age. Yeah. So my story starts when I'm about 15, 16. Like many people, things happen with families. Breakdowns, divorce, bereavement, all of those kind of happened to me at the age of kind of 15. Parents divorcing, quite traumatic. And there were things for me as an individual that I wasn't aware of at the time, which again I'll come to later at the end. And it affected me quite deeply and triggered the onset of bipolar disorder. Didn't know that that's what's going on. I think, as parents, and one of the things that I want to do very differently, I'm also a mum at the moment, but I'll come on to that as well. The knowledge, and this is in the 80s, it's 88, 89. So knowledge of mental health, and particularly mental health disorders and conditions within young people was very different to how it is now. So it went undiagnosed, and I was seen basically as an unruly, naughty teenager, basically, that had been very, very good up until that point. Kind of stuff. Never really set a foot wrong, to be honest with you, up until that point. And then when I was 17, about a week before my 17th birthday, I lost my dad. And that was very difficult. And then a year after that, I lost my nan as a result of losing my dad, because that was too much for her. She had a stroke when my dad passed. And then a year later, she had another stroke, which took her. And it was and she was buried with my dad. So you can imagine, as a 17-year-old, it's traumatic to lose your dad as it is, but then to go back to that grave just a year later to put your nan in it. So I said my emotion was probably going to come through, so I'll be fine. Of
course. Yeah.
And then as a result of that, which was very difficult, I became estranged from my mum and ended up homeless.
Sorry, just take your time.
Yeah. And I've spent obviously quite a bit of time trying to wrap your head around that as a young person. How you deal with that, and especially a young person who doesn't know she's got bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
as well, a mental health condition. But I'm pretty strong. I'm a pretty strong-headed, outspoken, independent woman, shall I say? And I think that was my saviour.
Yeah.
So I think if there's anything really good that my parents did for me as a child, is the importance of kind of building up strong, independent children, you know. But I still could have done with some parental support, you know, if that makes sense. And we can't move away from the importance of that as well, you know. So I pretty much was on my own. I did end up moving with my paternal family in Wigan for a little bit. So I lived there for about 5 years. But it was a very, very difficult time. Because I struggled, massively struggled, but didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And when you haven't got that much experience of the world, because remember, young people might seem like they're grown-ups and they've got it sorted out and that they'll be okay, but pretty much, you know, you're not a grown-up until your brain hasn't stopped really developing until you're about 25, 26, into your late 20s, approaching 30. So there's all kinds of complexities that add to that. But obviously the trauma of everything that had happened, and then still trying to find my way in the world at the age of 21, I also attempted suicide, to which I obviously survived, because I'm here talking about it today. But suicidality has been in the background all of my life as well.
Sure.
It's you can't escape it as a survivor. I shouldn't be here, also shouldn't be here. So I do, in one ways, I thank the NHS so much for not kind of giving it. I had to be resuscitated in the ambulance outside my house before they could take me to the hospital. And then I had to be resuscitated twice in the hospital. So 3 times they had to resuscitate me. So 3 times I died, basically. They brought me back. Which, you know, NHS, thank you. I wouldn't have what I have now if it hadn't been for you. But there's something else that I want to talk about as well in regards to that, and that was the care that I received afterwards. The care in the hospital. I was in hospital for 2 days afterwards, because, you know, I'd taken 67 cocodamol tablets. I'd really could have done some serious damage. I'm very lucky that I didn't damage my liver or any of my internal organs. But the care that I received, I was pretty much left alone for 2 days. Nobody really checking on me. I think occasionally a nurse came in to change my sick pan. Can you imagine? You're very as well. It doesn't stop. Your body's trying to get rid of all the poison and toxin that you've put into it. And was pretty much left with here's a number for a psychiatrist. We would recommend that you make an appointment and call them to make an appointment.
Yeah.
Which a 21-year-old girl that's just been through that kind of traumatic experience, because it's more trauma. It's not going to happen. And also, so nobody talked about mental health. This is 90.
Yeah.
You know, this is 91. Nobody talked about mental health in those times. You know, it just wasn't done. And it's just, you know, the care could have been better. And we're still seeing reports now, aren't we, of how NHS failings in terms of not just people with mental health conditions, but young people. We've all seen the reports from, and can I just say it was the same borough as well. So it was a Greater Manchester borough in terms of my mental health care. So nobody followed up with me. Nobody called me. I had conversations with my GPs and doctors kind of afterwards, and I was prescribed antidepressants. So I spent the majority of my life on antidepressants, but nobody really kind of following up or caring. It was just, oh, here's some antidepressants, go away and sort yourself out type thing. I think I've probably been on every single antidepressant that you can mention, which will make sense as my story gets told, kind of stuff, because really I didn't need antidepressants. I needed something else, kind of stuff. And that went on, and I struggled, and I ended up moving back to Southport and all of that kind of stuff. And then I started working in the events industry. So, you know, I managed to get my life sorted, bearing in mind what I'd gone through at such a young age. I was executive level, board level PA by the time I was 23. I worked incredibly hard to kind of try and turn things around for me. And again, I think that comes from my personal resilience and strength, and that, you know, knowing that I had more inside me, my life could be a lot better than it turned out to be. And it was from working as an exec level PA and organising events and putting board meetings and conferences and stuff on that I actually moved into the events industry, working in hotels and venues, wanting to move back to Southport, my hometown, to be nearer my family again, my brother and sister particularly. I was still estranged from my mum. Then I moved to the Prince of Wales in Southport. And from there, kind of the rest is history, really, kind of stuff. I'd found my calling, if that makes sense, because I love what I do as an event professional. I love the events industry. I love putting an event on, being in the middle of an operation from setup to breakdown. It is like giving me a drug, and the dopamine effect that I get from it. It's like nothing else. I just absolutely love what I do, which kind of inspires the work that I do with Eventwell, because I just want to make sure that what we do is the best that we can possibly do. And at the age of 30, working in hotels, I had the opportunity with Marriott. I worked for Marriott, very proud of my Marriott career. For anybody who knows Marriott Hotels and has been through the training with Marriott Hotels, you'll know exactly where I'm coming from. They look after their people and they're very good. They're probably one of the best hotel companies in the world in terms of that. I had the opportunity to move down south to Hanbury Manor. And that's when I found myself in London. Working for hotels and venues since 2003. So I was 30. It's when you have that. I'm 30 years old. It's the years of age. What do I want to do with my life? And it was only supposed to be a 5-year plan. We all had the 5-year plans. I was going to come to London for 5 years. I was going to take all that lovely London experience and take it back with me up north, kind of stuff. But Ben Moon walked into my life. The rest, as they say, you know, that's it, kind of stuff. House, child and stuff later, you know, not going back up north now. But he's kind of moving back to, and I'll always work in events. I did try to move out of events. For about 18 months, I worked for a local charity event when Lily, my daughter, was very small. And it was all right, but it wasn't events. So, you know, I ended up not leaving there and kind of just solely concentrating 100% on the events industry, because it's my world, and event profs are my tribe and my people, if that makes sense. But there's always been the struggle in the background, because obviously I had things going on in terms of my health and my mental health and well-being that were difficult, that were traumatic, that up until 2009, and this is bearing on mind, this is approaching 20 years that I've had undiagnosed bipolar before I get an official diagnosis. And in 2000, I moved into proactive sales. I was working for a particular venue. It was very busy. I was here, there, and I was traveling all over the country. Burnout was a big factor. I was probably burning out quite regularly. I've not just had one burnout. I've had lots of like mini burnouts. But 2008, 2009 was quite significant, because 2008 I got married. And then 2009, my mum came back into my life from that estrangement. And it was the trauma from that experience. Even though most people will think, well, that's good, your mum's back in your life, but it's remembering that it's the trauma of being estranged from a parent and losing a parent in the first place. For that parent to then come back in your life, it's the trauma of that parent coming back in. So it creates additional, brings back past trauma. I had a huge breakdown basically in 2009. And then my funny story in terms of my bipolar diagnosis was actually watching Stacey Slater's story on EastEnders about bipolar. And then looking at certain kind of, and then from that, going to look at Bipolar UK, going to their website and the information they provide, and then talking to other people and listening to other people's stories with bipolar that kind of go, that's me. That's me. I can relate to a lot of that behaviour. We'll come back to that for what's happened more recently. So I went to my GP. My care, by the way, in Greenwich, where I live now, Royal Borough of Greenwich, in terms of my doctors and the NHS, has been impeccable. It's been absolutely amazing. So I just want to kind of put that out there, that not everybody's experience in terms of their care with the NHS will be the same. It's very postcode lottery, which it shouldn't be. There's too many areas of health where it's a postcode lottery in terms of the standard and the level of care that you receive. Greenwich have been phenomenal. They've been absolutely amazing. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I was under special mental health midwifery care as well.
Brilliant.
Which was really nice because actually I got to listen to my daughter's heartbeat every 2 weeks. Whereas another, because I saw that as a keeping you calm.
Yeah.
Keeping you stress free, because actually you're at a 40% increased risk of developing postpartum psychosis, not just depression, if you have bipolar, diagnosed with bipolar. So that was really important, but that was really nice. So I just wanted to add that really lovely story in terms of, you know, how the NHS can get it right for people, and they've always got it right for me.
Brilliant.
But in 2009 I did have that big breakdown. My bipolar disorder was diagnosed. But I think the big fit from that, I was able then to kind of make changes that were necessary in terms of how I looked after myself. It took 2 or 3 years for me to get used to the idea. Again, more trauma. Because you've just been diagnosed effectively with a chronic mental health condition. Bipolar doesn't go away, by the way. You have bipolar for life. It can be in remission. You can control it and you can manage it, but it will always be a niggle, if that makes sense. It'll always be there. And then there's my experience of working and my career and working in the events industry that is stressful. It's fast-paced. It's pressured. The stress of managing a career that I loved, but also having a mental health condition that makes me more vulnerable than other people would be. The times where I've found myself in a toilet because toilets came to be my friend, my best friend. It was always my place to go, if that makes sense, which has inspired the Quiet Room. And many other people that I've talking to who live with mental health conditions or are neurodivergent will have a similar story in terms of the times that they've spent locked away in a toilet because something has happened. It's the only place where they can go and get what they deem to be safety, where they can just lock themselves away for 10 minutes and do what they need to do, compose themselves and check their mascara in the mirror. Are my eyes too red? Are people going to be able to tell I've been crying and upset? And I kind of use an analogy. I've said it to you as well, haven't I, Matt? That kind of, you feel like at that moment in time, you feel like your life is going down a toilet and you're physically sat on one. It's the dignity and the additional shame that is associated with that when you're living with something that you can't really talk to people about because stigma stops and the shame and stigma associated with that stops you. So it's like it's almost like the Game of Thrones shame. Shame. So it's kind of living with that, and I'm kind of really pleased that we've got to a point now that you know, discussions are being had and people like me, our tribe, can actually be honest and open and authentic and about who we are, that it's okay to show vulnerability. So that 2009, that having that bipolar diagnosis was a real, as you'd expect it to be after 20 years of not knowing, was a real changer. And then when I turned 40, I think that's when really my kind of self-care journey started for me. There's been times I've been on medication for bipolar, but pretty much I tend to manage it myself without medication. I do that a lot by I've really honed in my self-awareness, self-care. So I know and I recognize certain emotions, and when I'm slightly more tearful and stuff like that as well, it's for me, I take that as a signal that you need to rest a little bit. Rest, you need to step back a little bit. Stuff can wait, you can do that another time. And then having my little girl was a life changer. So things like alcohol and caffeine were all cut out of my life because I had to, again, more trauma. Me and my husband tried for a child for 8 years. Under investigations again with the NHS. I feel like I'm calling out the NHS. Can I just say that Greenwich are amazing?
You did say that already, but yeah, you can say it again. That's fine.
Can I just say that? But you know, we all know. 5 years of investigating what might be wrong, nothing being found, and then as soon as I go private, we discover that I have damaged fallopian tubes. And I can't conceive naturally. So, and that I also have a big fibroid.
Okay.
that needs to be removed. So, that was also a difficult time. I found that very difficult to cope with at the time. I contemplated attempting suicide again.
Right. Yeah.
Not a serious attempt like the last time.
Yeah.
My husband he's aware of my mental health condition, so he kind of knows. He took all the tablets and stuff out the house. He's very aware of my story, and he knows what to do, if that makes sense. So I was safe, and we took me to hospital straight away to get me to. So I was with people, and I was safe, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think that also is the turnaround, is actually going for that private treatment, then discovering what was wrong, and then going through. I had to go through a very difficult IVF journey, 4 rounds of IVF. I did miscarry, I did lose a pregnancy, early days, but it's still very difficult for you to contemplate that.
Yeah.
But happily now I have my daughter.
Yeah.
I had to have a myomectomy to remove my fibroids, so I wasn't able to have a natural birth. I had to have an operation. I nearly died when I had my myomectomy because I lost so much blood. I had to have a blood transfusion, and then again the same. I lost an awful lot of blood when I had my C-section to have my little girl. So I think my life at points has been so much trauma.
Yeah.
But I'm in such a different place now to where I was, because I understand mental health so much more. My resilience is just a different level. And resilience isn't about you being strong, and resilience is I allow things to let that whatever needs to happen. It's resilient means you bounce back. How you come back afterwards to kind of go, right, okay, I'm fine now, stronger again. That's fine. We can do this. Let's come with it. So all of that has happened, and obviously we get to the point now. So my little girl is 6 now. I'm 49. So I have something else that's happening in my life right now, which we've talked about, haven't we?
Yes.
And I think this is an area of women's lives that we don't understand or don't appreciate the impact on mental health and well-being so much, and that's menopause. So I'm currently perimenopausal, and that journey itself has been a very difficult kind of 2 to 3 years of not knowing or understanding anything about perimenopause and the effect that can have on your health. Being a mental health patient, and going through perimenopause, my GP's not understanding enough about perimenopause, because you'll probably find in most medical centres there's only one GP that's actually trained in menopause. So if you don't see the menopause doctor, so it can be, oh, here's some antidepressants kind of stuff. No, I don't want those.
Yeah, there's something else going on.
Bipolar medication. No, I don't want that. And that's why I wanted to bring up the self-awareness, because when you are very self-aware, it's not my bipolar, it's not depression. This is something else. This is something else I haven't experienced before. There's something going on with my brain and my body. I even contemplated, is it early set dementia? I was getting aches and pains in all my joints. Things hurt on a different level. I thought maybe I've got early onset arthritis, because my mum has arthritis. So all kinds of different levels. And then the added thing that's come in is my little girl, bless her, has quite a few sensory things that I've noticed in her, as any mum would do, and you notice certain types of behaviours. And obviously that's not for me to say that she's neurodivergent, because she hasn't had an official diagnosis and we haven't had that investigated for her. But she certainly has some sensory things that caught my attention in terms of me taking a very close look at myself.
Right.
And from that, gone to my GP, done my assessments. Now, I haven't had a clinical diagnosis, so a psychiatric diagnosis yet. And it's early days, and to be honest, I don't want to put myself on a 5-year waiting list.
No.
Pay £1,000 for a private consultation. Thank you very much. I don't think that I should or I need to. But we've confirmed that I'm actually ADHD, autistic, which is what I actually wanted to mention in terms of, as a young child, there's an awful lot that I now understand about myself that the bipolar diagnosis was not able to answer. So things like, I'm incredibly impulsive. My husband's actually just walked into the kitchen. I can imagine he's stood in the kitchen going, yep.
Yep.
And when you have bipolar disorder, when you're feeling manic, you can be incredibly impulsive. But what that diagnosis was never able to answer for me was, I'm impulsive all the time. I'm not just impulsive, when I'm manic. It's all the time. All the time. And other areas of neurodiversity as well, you know, and being neurodivergent as well. So
wow.
It's changed my life. That's to even to the fact now that I would need to go back to psychiatry to confirm this. So don't anybody take like my life experience and kind of go, oh, I'm going to do the same. Make sure that it's always done in consultation with your GP and your whoever's responsible for your care. But even now, I would question the bipolar diagnosis.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, the depression is actually quite common for people who are neurodivergent. Depression and anxiety tend to go hand in hand. I think 80% of people who are neurodivergent will also have problems and issues with their mental well-being and their mental health, or be living with a mental health condition. It's always like call it a side helping of a kind of mental health condition. So yes, so it's I'd kind of question that now, but the diagnosis has given me, it's enabled me now to truly be comfortable with myself in a way that I have never been before. And I've always been kind of very open and honest about having a bipolar and living with bipolar. But you know, it's like the neurodiversity is very different. I kind of, whenever I've spoken about having bipolar disorder, I've always basically said from a way that I won't let it define me. I'm not bipolar, I have bipolar. Being neurodivergent for me is very different. I embrace it. Like,
Gift.
Being neurodivergent, it's who you are.
And it's a gift of who you are as well, isn't it? It's you, it's part of you, it's who Helen is.
Yeah, exactly. It's how your brain works, it's how your brain's wired, it's how you do things. And it's nice. I'm still on that journey because it's still early days, but it's nice to fully learn about Helen and why Helen does things in the way that she does. And then we can put things around that to kind of say, you know, so, and also for my husband and my little girl to have that understanding as well. Kind of it supports our family dynamic in a way that, you know, when certain things happen, it's not being done on purpose. That's just
amazing.
She can't do anything, you know, she can't really do anything about it. It's just the way, you know, Helen does things or Mummy does things, you know. So that's my journey.
Brilliant. It's an incredible journey. It genuinely is, Helen. And you know, I think so many parts to it, and I think you tell the story so well around all of those pieces and how they interlink and how they come together. And you know, there is that risk of, you know, the misdiagnosis of things, and you know, you talk about that when you think about things like menopause, or you think about neurodiversity versus, you know, and oh my gosh, there's so many different parts to it, isn't there? It's all moving parts as well. It's not like a static pieces, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, which is why this is so important. You know, it's why talking about mental health is so important. We should never ever stop talking about mental health, because talking about mental health ensures that, you know, through my journey, I've listening to people talk about bipolar, I went and spoke to my doctor to get help and support that I needed. Listening to and being aware of neurodiversity and listening to other people talk about neurodiversity made me take a closer look at myself again to kind of go, hang on a second, that's me, and then go and get the help I need.
Brilliant.
You know, misdiagnosis is important, but I think we're getting to a place now, and hopefully, you know, that we can get the NHS to a place now, although we have still got a long way to go. But, you know, care in the community and support outside of the community and the lives that we lead will push this, because people are more informed to be able to go to the doctor and kind of go, because you can't do a blood test for any of this. So we can't just put all the blame on the NHS, because they can't put you on an MRI scan and kind of go, oh yes, I can see from your brain scan that it would indicate this. They can only diagnose any kind of neurodiversity or mental health by listening to you talk about your behaviours, and about us being open and honest about what it is that we experience, and things that disable us or things that enable us. So by us getting comfortable with being vulnerable, and by us getting comfortable about talking about what we're experiencing, we can help the NHS to help us. Brilliant.
You know, and I think you're absolutely right. And you know, the thing that we're striving towards is greater awareness of these these things. That's why these conversations are so useful, because hopefully somebody listening will sort of listen to a part of it, think actually maybe that's something that's relating to me. And the only way to really know that is to go and do your research and learn a little bit more about what's going on. And there are assessment tests out there that you can do online, which I always put the cautionary thought around that. They're not diagnosis tools, they're just about recognizing some of those things may be relevant to you, or they may be experiencing those things. So encouraging people to take a look.
Doing that with a trained.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's so important, isn't it? Because we
Yes,
become quite worried about, oh my God, I've got this, or this has happened, or I'm experiencing this, and then it can be quite daunting and overwhelming. So seek professional help, I think, is the most important thing if you are seriously concerned. I think my question, I'm sorry, was that?
Google is not your GP.
No, exactly. Yeah, there's anyway, we won't even go down that path, because there's so many different avenues we could explore. But the thing that's important is, don't just give yourself a label because you think it might be that label. It's got to be supported properly, and that's the encouragement for anybody that's listening. Helen, we are right at the end of this. We're well beyond the 30 minutes that we scheduled, but don't worry about it. It's all good, because it's so important. And I love your story, your journey. I don't love it, as I always say, I don't love the fact you've been through these experiences, but one thing that I think is so powerful for you is all the things that you've been through, the experiences have driven you to a place where now you're doing something really positive to help support others through your social enterprise with EventWell, through the work that you're doing to raise awareness, to support people by giving them spaces that are safe at events in particular, not just the toilet. Maybe, my branding, my creative brain was going, maybe you should just put toilet signs across the top of the piece where you put the silent room, and then people will be quite intrigued by that, right? You don't need to put toilets in there, but anyway, just going off on a total tangent with that. But that's so important, and what you're doing is a really important message to people. And I just want to encourage, for anybody from the travel industry, like I said before, anybody in the events industry or conferences or whatever you're doing, always think about how can we improve the support for, and it may only be a small percentage of the people that are there. I'm probably guessing it's going to be quite a big percentage of the people there in the future, but do things that are positive to help support everybody. That's the most important thing we can share here, right?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. We always say at EventWell, and I will always make sure, even when it gets to the time that I'm not at the helm of EventWell and somebody else is taking the brand that's going to stay. Our ethos will always remain that we're not about big numbers. We're not interested in big profits and big numbers. We're about the one person who needed us to be where we were. So the one person that needed a quiet room to be in place. We're about the one person that needed to listen to me talking to you today, Matt. We're about there. We did a session this morning on perimenopause. There was one lady in particular in that session that's seen her GP on Monday and was like, thank you so much. I know I have so much more information where I can go. Brilliant. I've got this, and I don't listen to all these ladies talking about this experience. We're about the one person. About the one person. This isn't about big numbers. Any of us that work in this space, and Matt the same, amazing in terms of what you do, any of us that work in this space, we're not about massive numbers. We just want to make a difference. One person who needs us at a time. Because I've had people that helped me, and I just want to make sure that the generations that are coming and the younger people that are coming, I don't want young people to go through the experience I went through. I want them to immediately from the offset, to someone to be able to go, we need to get you to a GP and get you checked out and get you some help that you need, because that's not normal kind of stuff. That's what we need to be striving towards, to for people to feel safe.
And there's so much we can do, and there are so many things we can learn, and there is so much awareness that we can raise. So for everybody listening, please share these messages, these thoughts with everybody because the more we share the facts, the reality, the real people talk about their journeys, their experiences, the better it becomes for everybody. Honestly, it does. Albeit we're unveiling the reality of mental health, mental illness, we are showing people that it's okay to live with these things, with bipolar disorder forever. Managing it is the important part, and living with it and using it as part of your experience and your journey should never be something you're ashamed of. It should be something that you say, it's part of me, I can't change that. Neurodiversity is part of people. We're all in a different place on the spectrum, so believe that if you want to, but it is true. So always be mindful of that. We're all unique, we're all amazing humans, right? And in particular, anybody that comes on a podcast recording with me is a very high up the amazing humans ranks. But Helen, I just want to say a huge thank you so much for joining me on on this session, for sharing your story, for we've both been having like fidget toys or things in our hands for the whole session. So mine's my small brain blue tack, and yours is a big green brain. So amazing stuff. For anybody that's listening, you have no idea what we're talking about, go and have a look at it on video on YouTube. But Helen, just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you so much for everything, your insights. If anybody listening is concerned or worried about anything that we've covered in this session, please do know there are always people out there to talk to. Samaritans, of course, exist today as a safe space to talk about whatever it is that's worrying you. You can call for free on 116 123. You can also text to shout 85258 if you need some extra sort of text support, but always know there's somebody there to listen. You can reach out to Helen, I hope. You can reach out to me. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so, because that's what this is all about. It's giving people opportunity to access the real people who are talking about this stuff. Brilliant stuff, Helen. Thank you so much. I want to wish you an event well, and everybody in your family and all the people around you, all the very best, and just keep enjoying that journey. It's a long one ahead, right? Enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.